what I told my kids, what I convinced myself is I'm out on the road doing all these things for my kids. No, I wasn't. I was doing it for myself. And so if you're truly doing it for your family, then you will figure out a way to make it the most potent in the smallest amount of time so you can spend as much time with your family.
Welcome to the Hairpreneur Show, the show that teaches you, the hair pro, how to work smarter so you can make more, work less, and live a purpose-driven life on your schedule, not your clients'. I'm your host, Ryan Whedon, and each week I'll teach you awesome, actionable ways to tap into your personal greatness. Through marketing, mindset, and confidence training, it's time to unlock the next level of you. Let's grow. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hairpreneur Show. I'm your host, Ryan Whedon. I'm really excited. I'm always excited. I always start my show by kind of saying the same thing. But yes, I am excited or I wouldn't be here. Today I have an awesome guest that I'm just fired up to pick his brain. It's Kelly Cardenas in the Mob studio today. He is the national educator for John Paul Mitchell Systems for over 20 years. You've got online courses. You just authored a book called The 6 Indicators for Business and Life. And there's a whole other stuff, a bunch of stuff that I'm curious to talk about. But welcome to the show, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I was saying before we started how incredible it is what Hairpreneur is doing. And, you know, with the podcast, with your content and just you as a person, man. I mean, it's phenomenal. I commend you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Man, I'm just looking at your studio here. I know you can't see it if you're listening, but your studio, you're in this nice leather comfy chair. It looks like you got your books propped up. It's really nice scene that I'm looking at. And I just got this boring blue background here, which normally I've got a bunch of guitars in the background, but I was shooting something and I didn't have a chance to change it.
I think yours looks amazing though, man. Seriously, it's incredible. I wanted a Dr. Evil chair for quite some time. It doesn't have an eject button yet, but it's coming. So
that's exactly what it is. It's a Dr. Evil chair. I love it. And I see you're wearing a Lompoc shirt. And that's, you said where you're from. I said it wrong, didn't I?
Lompoc represent. If you're from Lompoc, you know what I'm talking about. Central Coast represent.
That's awesome. Sorry about messing up where you came from.
It's okay, man. It's all right.
Well, I know that you're in Carlsbad now, and I love seeing your daily posts on Instagram where you've got what's the name of your bike that you always cruise up to the beach with?
It's the Carlsbad Bentley, man.
The Carlsbad Bentley. That thing looks sick. It's a beach cruiser, right? That thing is just probably one gear, right?
Yeah, one gear. I bought it from my neighbor. My neighbor was going to clean out his garage and it didn't have a seat on it. And he was like, hey, I'm trying to get rid of it. I said, do not sell it. I want that green. I wanted that army green. So I put the seat on it. It had the regular beach cruiser bars. And I'm from Lompoc and all my Lompoc people know what I'm talking about. I wanted to get some ape hangers, but I didn't want to pay for them. So I took it out to the street, put it on the curb, beat it with a sledgehammer and made the handlebars myself. And so I have so much joy on that bike. It brings me so much joy. It's just the simple things in life, I believe.
That's amazing. And I assume you live pretty close to the beach now because those bikes, amazing as they are, that one gear is not going to take you up many hills.
We're very fortunate, man. Very, very blessed. 2 blocks from the water. So
that's amazing. When I saw your post on Instagram and you're always at the beach, it seems like in the mornings, it seems like to be kind of like a ritual, if I'm not mistaken. At one point, I'm like, there's no way he goes to the beach every single morning or often as you seem to go. And I'm like, this must just be like a green screen. He just throws the beach behind.
This morning, man, I knew I had to take my daughter to school at 7 a.m. I'm priding myself on that. But this morning I was up at 5 o'clock and to the beach by 5:30. And I got to see the sunrise there in Carlsbad. But literally, I mean, every day I could get there, I'm there. And I absolutely love it. It's not the ritual. It's the time that I spend. So the relationship part of it. And I think that that's the biggest part. And I want to make sure that I connect with that as opposed to thinking that the routine is going to bring magic. The relationship with why I'm going in the first place brings the magic.
And how long have you been kind of having that relationship with just your mornings? And I feel like relationships are very important to you.
It's the biggest thing, man. I've got the same friend since I was in 4th grade. My best friend in the world, William Simmons, shout out from Lompoc. Also David Jansen, Dale Schell, Alfred Johnson, Andy Pike. All these buddies are buddies since I've been in 4th grade. And, you know, we all grew up together. We got the same exact crew. My best friend in the whole entire world has been with me my whole life. That's my big brother. And you know, for me, I learned, but I wasted a lot of time when I lived in Carlsbad because I've been here for like 9 years. But it was August, September, somewhere around there when I really locked in. I mean, I would say I was tiptoeing every day in probably May, but by August, September, literally every single day.
That's amazing. What do your days look like now? Because you used to be behind the chair a lot, right? That was your thing, and you're educating and you're traveling around, I'm sure, a lot. I definitely, there's a lot I want to learn about you myself. But now you're doing more speaking. You've got the Kelly Cardenas podcast. What does your day and your weeks typically look like now as your role has expanded quite a bit?
Well, I try and spend my day saying no as many times as possible. And the reason why I say this is because if you're young in the business, you need to be saying yes to every single thing. That's what I think. When I say you need to, I mean, that's what I did. I just said yes to every single thing that I possibly could. If it was a show, if it was a class, if it was whatever. If I worked 7 days and then there was something on the 8th, if I worked 21 days, there was something on the 22nd day, I was saying yes. Nowadays, I try and spend my days as much as possible on, saying no and, saying no to things that aren't in line with my purpose and with my family. And so a Monday, I take guests from 8 to 12. So 1 at 8, 1 at 10, 1 at 12, and I limit it to 3. On Wednesday, I do the same thing. I get to record podcasts on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I try and reserve Friday for my family, and then Saturday, family, Sunday, church and family, and then I roll it over again. And so I find, though, what's crazy, Ryan, and you'll see this as you go, and I'm sure you're seeing this, the more times I say no, the more opportunity I get. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a really, really cool thing. And the speaking side has been phenomenal. And now I never would have thought that a little kid from Lompoc that barely graduated from high school is literally speaking to Fortune 500 companies and helping them to be able to build their cultures. Like I was at the Servant Leadership Institute before the coronavirus stuff happened, obviously. But, it's like military leaders, Fortune 500 companies, all these people. And there's a hairdresser. And I want to encourage all the hairdressers out there that the principles that we utilize, we have a larger voice than we think we do.
And right now, with people always ask me too, how do you get on stage? How do you do that now? And I pretty much just pick up my phone and I say, here's your stage. Everybody has a stage in their pocket right now, where years ago, you didn't have that. You actually had to work for a big brand, or you had to as they say, you want to be on stage, you got to build your own stage. You got to take action. If nobody's giving you those opportunities, you got to create those opportunities for yourself. But I mean, it's so easy now. I mean, there's still that fear of like, if I press the live button, what's going to happen is, if I say something wrong, is my life over? No, because when you first go live, probably nobody's going to watch you anyway. So you got some time to practice. So pick up your phone, press that button, and just start practicing, right? But everybody has a stage in their pocket.
That's amazing, man.
Now, when you started to teach on stage and you're teaching for these Fortune 500 companies and all these military leaders, are people reaching out to you for this? Are you reaching out to them and saying, hey, here's my promo? Like, how do you book these jobs?
I think the biggest thing is relationships, right? The relationships. And like you said, I mean, being willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do. So I think if we could start from the foundation, right? So I was just talking with some kids today. I'm involved with a financial literacy, a company that we have that's in beauty schools to teach kids how to allocate their money in different ways, because the number one reason why kids leave this industry as hairdressers, if you're listening, you're a hairdresser. And the number one reason why people leave is because of finances, and it's not how much they make, but the allocation of those funds. Right. And most people don't teach that part. They don't talk about that because it's like it's not fun. It's not shiny. It's not all the stuff. So I was talking to these kids and I told them, I said, look, when I started the brand, right? So when I started my brand and I took this thing, right? Mm-hmm. I created a faceless entity that I wanted to be a Nike symbol that everyone could put their face in and say that they own the company because of the way that they acted. And so it became a symbol of quality. And I told them 15 years ago that, I said, I wanted to liken it to like a Nike. And 15 years ago when I was unemployed, people were like, that's a lofty goal. And I was like, well, I mean, I have a goal if it's not lofty. But what I did is I put this logo, and then I put Paul Mitchell under it because I worked with Paul Mitchell. And so I leveraged $1 billion brand with something that no one knew. And then as people started to see the two together, I started to shrink the Paul Mitchell until I had that. And then people in Las Vegas or in Chicago or, in Carlsbad, they would see it and they'd be like, oh, that's Paul Mitchell. It's not Paul Mitchell, but I leveraged. So what I would suggest is every one of you, although it's great to go out on your own and do your own thing, if you can use the leverage of relationships of somebody who's already been there, it puts you in a different position and you don't have to fight for your credibility. So I made friends with a guy named Art Barter. He's the CEO and founder of the Servant Leadership Institute. I made friends with him because Ken Blanchard was speaking at a place. Well, I took one of my books and I signed it to Ken. And my wife was like, "Why are you doing that? Do you know him?" And I said, "Not yet." So I snuck over. I dropped down like in between segments at the place where he spoke. And I popped over. I said, I knew I only had like 15 seconds. I said, "Mr. Blanchard, I want to thank you so much for all your principles. I was raised on them. My dad raised me on them. And our company is successful only because of you. And I want to thank you for that." And he said, "Well, what is your company?" I said, "Thank you for asking. Here's my book." And I ran off. And he was sitting next to a guy. I meet Art Barter. He invites me to speak to at the Servant Leadership Institute. So I'm on the bill with Ken Blanchard and Art Barter, and Cardenas in the alphabet comes right after Blanchard. So in the bill, it went Art Barter, Ken Blanchard, Kelly Cardenas. But I was speaking, like, Ryan, honestly, on the last day, the last spot, like in the parking lot. But the way that the bill was, it was set up. So I just think it's honestly putting yourself out there, but also it's making relationships and being as kind to people as possible and making as many friends as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm. It's a huge relationship business. And as far as you're talking about leveraging as opposed to trying to do it all yourself, which I've tried that. It's impossible. You can't do it. Eventually, you're just going to pull your hair out. As your business and brand start to grow, it's like you got to start outsourcing some things. You can't keep doing your own books. You can't keep doing your own taxes. You can't keep doing your own social media. Like, I mean, there's certain things you should be doing, but you got to expand your team if you want to actually make a bigger impact and make more money and still have that mental health on top of everything, right? I also completely agree with what you were saying about saying no as your time gets more and more limited, but saying yes at the beginning of your career or at the beginning of new opportunities, because I think people think like, well, I don't need to pay my dues. And it's not even about paying your dues. It's about building those relationships. It's about showing people that you care so much that you're willing to sweep the floor just to be part of a show, to be part of an experience. Because now that I'm the CEO of a business, I look at those people and I see those people coming up in my company, the ones that are just will drop everything at a moment's notice just to be in the same room as one of our classes. And I'm like, I have my eye on you, and they're the ones that are rising. They're the ones that are going to be the big stars because I relate to that. Yeah. Another thing about leveraging relationships too, that I was taking from you, I see this with the top marketers, the top personal growth trainers, and they're all working together. I mean, they're not all in it for themselves. You got Tony Robbins, you got Brendan Burchard, Amy Porterfield, Stu McLaren, like all these people are doing events together. They have their own thing going on, but they leverage each other's audiences to exponentially reach more people, and it benefits everyone. You know, I mean, just say you and I did a thing and you're going to have your super fans. I'm going to have my super fans, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to share some fans, right? We can all work together to create something bigger and kind of more badass than ourselves.
And what I would say to Ryan is, especially to the young kids out there, independent is what everyone talks about. Like, oh, I got to be independent. I got to do my own thing, things like that. But I could tell you this, guys, honestly, like, I mean, to be able to get into a place, to be able to, I mean, even Disney, I'm reading a book about Disney right now. Disney didn't finance Disney. Disney went to I believe it was ABC or NBC. They funded Disneyland. They paid for Disneyland because he had something and he was able to have a relationship and work that way. And what I want people to understand is, like, for me, I'm very fortunate, very blessed that I got a chance to be around Paul Mitchell in the first place. And there was this movement that was like, oh, we're, anti-manufacturer. We're anti this, anti that. I'm not anti anybody. I want to be friends with everyone. I want to be friends with people because, and it's not to get something, but I could tell you this as a young artist. I mean, why reinvent the wheel? Like, for me, I didn't need to reinvent the wheel. I needed to go and find out the best wheel and then hang with the people who invented it and learn and be around and serve at the highest level. If you seriously want to grow your business, serve people at the highest level, and magic will happen.
Now, you recently wrote a book, and I know how hard it is to write a book. I wrote a book, and when I first wrote a book, it was called Sweet Success, How to Make Six Figures in a Salon Suite. And it was funny because when I started writing it and when I actually had my first draft, it was like Lord of the Rings thick. It was probably like, 700 pages. And then once we edited it down and chopped it up, took out all the Ryanisms and all the repeated thoughts. It was like, we got 70 pages of stuff here we can, use. So I'm like, all right, this is fine. This is good. And I'm like, there's not even enough of a spine to actually put the title on the back. I'm like, okay, this is a good first attempt. So, but I know that even to do something like that, it takes months. It takes time. It takes, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and writing even when you're not inspired. And there's a lot of times when you're going to have to sit down and write and you're not going to be inspired. So please tell me about your book, 6 Indicators for Business and Life. And if you could even elaborate on some of those indicators, I'm like super excited to hear about it.
Well, so the whole premise is that most of us, if our speedometer went out on our car, we would not drive our car, not because it couldn't drive, but because you wouldn't know how fast or slow you're going. And that would impede your judgment, right? So if you didn't know you were going 60 or 100, your reaction time is going to be different. And your reaction time needs to be different based off the speed that you're going. But most people, and like I said, most people would not drive their car because the speedometer is broken. But most people drive their lives, their businesses, and their relationships without any indicators to tell them how fast or slow they're going in their particular areas. And so what this is, it's a way to be able to almost gauge it. I've never met anyone who's at a 10 in all 6 indicators. I've never seen it because that's a perfect person. And generally you're in heaven at that time. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not going to happen. So, that was the premise for me. The writing process, I've written my whole life as far as just when I was a kid. I went from the time I was in 4th grade to the time I was in 6th grade. I had to take 10 pages of notes every single day before I could go out and play. I had to take 10 pages of notes it was a millionaire course that my dad did. That's a whole other podcast. So I was into writing, but, and I journaled all the time and things like that. But the book came from speaking on it. I spoke on it for it's about 4 years, all over the country, all over the world, spoke on the concept, and we employed it in our company. It was very successful, utilizing the 6 indicators. And then my wife, I told her that I wanted to write a book, and she had heard it one too many times. She said, why don't you shut up and go do it? And this is going to make you mad, Ryan. But I wrote it in 6 days.
That's amazing. But you spent a lifetime of writing and speaking about it. So you just had to put it on paper.
Absolutely. And so we went through. So the first one is culture. Culture is the most important thing in any business. Any time that I find any challenges, and when I coach whatever businesses there are, anything, when I coach businesses, relationships, any of those things, it all boils down every time to one of these 6 indicators. Every time. There's never been a situation, a goal that a person has, anything like that I've ever seen that's outside of the 6. Number 1 is culture. And most of the things always go back to culture. Right. So if you're failing in your marriage is failing, you're having challenges. What I say is stop, look, and listen, and go back to the core of what type of culture you have in your relationship. Right. So culture is number 1. Number 2 is vibe. Vibe is everything. When you got on the podcast, it was like you were fast friends. Like I saw you and I'm like, yeah, Ryan is awesome. Right. So you have that vibe already. Next thing is process and procedure, but most people get that cart ahead of the horse, and so the process and procedure, we look at productivity, innovation, and then the ability to adapt immediately. And so when you look at these things, you score yourself in them. There's never going to be a time where you're 10 in all of them. And whatever you're good at, then you don't have to focus on that day or that week or that month. And then the others that you suck at, you just need to work at them.
That's amazing. Yeah. So how can I and the listeners get a hold of that book?
Well, kellycardenas.com. You can do that. Mm-hmm. The book is on there. We took it down off of Amazon. So kellycardenas.com is the best way to go about it. And so
that's a good segue because I was actually wanted to talk to you about your website. Went on there, loved it. I love the intro video too, where you're waking up, you're getting ready for a show day, and you're walking down the hall, and your entourage is starting to step up and follow you, and it was just very cool. It was very like Reservoir Dogs.
Funny about it, Ryan, is we actually filmed that on the day of a speaking event. So I was speaking to about 2,500, and most people are like, hey, what are you speaking on? Have you practiced it for years and years or whatever it is, and you got it down and you're going to say every single word? Well, I had that plan, and then God gave me a word the night before, and we filmed that the night before. That was the intro for it, and it was a huge speaking event. I mean, 2,500 people is pretty large, and we filmed the day before. Mm-hmm. The night before, God gave me a word and was like, you're not using the other thing that you already prepared for. You're using this, and gave it to me that night. And right before I walked on stage to deliver that message, my dad sent me a text message, and I took it, screenshotted it, and handed it to the production person in the back and said, I need you to have this come up because I need to use this because this was a word. I mean, almost everything I want you to realize is like, allow it to be who you are. And like, my wife always says, stick with the plan, but go with the flow, because where the magic is where the flow is at.
Well, you seem like, too, you really embrace that life of serving others. And that's where you exist, where you are a messenger, really, right? To help other people. You said you're open to, what was the word? Was it like a word, or was it a message? Or
it was a message. And the message was really simple. It was surrender. What surrender was, one time I was in church and I was there and, I was praising. So I just praised and I had my hands up. Then God said, put your hands on top of your head. And then he said, put your hands behind your back. And when I got done, I sat down. I was wondering why this happened. And he told me, he said, the first thing that you have to do is surrender. When the cops tell you, stick your hands up, it's surrender. You have to show that you don't have anything. Right. The second one is when you put your hands on top of your head, you give permission to search. That officer the permission to search. And so what he was saying is, first, you got to surrender. Second, give me the ability to search your being for anything outside of your purpose. And then he put my hands behind my back. And that was saying that you're getting taken into custody, that you're relinquishing your rights and being taken into custody. And now someone else's will is in place of your will. And he said, first, you got to surrender. Second, you got to let me search your character. Third, you got to let me take you into custody. And then I can start to do the things that you're purposed to do as opposed to what you want to do. It was amazing too, Ryan, because, what that happened, and I spoke to those people. So that was hairdressers I spoke to, 2,500. But what it did, man, is opened up a prison ministry for me. And because of that, right? So think about that. All the prisoners, they all have the formula for success. They've all been arrested. They've all had to do this. They've all had to do this. They've all had to do that. But if they apply it in a different part of life, and I got to go and speak at the highest security prison in the country where they have El Chapo. There's only one, Supermax prison. And I got to go speak at it and speak with the inmates. And when I got to give them that message of hands up, hands on top of the head, hands behind your back. And until you surrender completely to your purpose, like you guys are doing now, because you guys are incarcerated, you don't get to choose. When you get to a point where you're not choosing and you're allowing your purpose to take over your life, magic begins to happen.
You also have a bunch of online courses. I noticed that on your website as well. Have you been working on those for years? I'm curious because I'm a course creator, online course creator as well. What does that process look like for you?
Well, I mean, number one is like when you're first to the dance, it doesn't always mean it's good. I mean, like I created my first online course, it's probably 9 years ago. So, I mean, guys, like now, did it sell all over the place? No, it didn't. But we created those things so long ago. And there were so many things that were dormant within. So we started Zooming, man. I mean, it's crazy because I do speaking all over the country, but we started doing this 15 years ago. Because we did it every week in our company because we have locations all over the country. And we have this, and it's still to this day, every Tuesday, every single person in the company stands up and says who they're inspired by, and they got 15 seconds to do it. They have to look into the camera. So we trained all of our people, and now our people go on Zooms and they can connect virtually like no one else because they were doing those things. So not to say, like I said, I'm not a master of it. Mm-hmm. Did it a long time ago. And I mean, just trying. Your stuff is phenomenal. I want to applaud you. You're doing great things, man. And I just need to learn. I need to learn from you, brother.
Happy to teach you. I've learned a lot over the years, and I feel like there's still so much more to learn because technology keeps evolving at such a rapid pace. And not only just the technology, but the audio and video. And it's like, what's the next best camera? There's a new camera coming out, it seems like every other week. And I'm like, just when I think I have the one I need, I'm like, oh, I think I need that one too. I have kind of a technology issue where it's like, I always need the next one. Like, I'm not going to buy Gucci, but I'll buy like a really nice camera.
Well, you got tattoos, so you don't have to wear Gucci.
No, it was funny too, because we have a questionnaire that I sent out to you, and you said, is there anything else that you're super excited to highlight? And of course, you said your podcast, which is the Kelly Cardenas podcast, your book, and your family. And your family was first. And that was, I don't know why I said that last, but your family was first. And I want to hear about your family. Let's talk about it. You've got some kids, right?
Yeah, I got 2 kids, McKenna, who's 12, and she just started junior high this week on Tuesday. So I want to congratulate her. She's such a phenomenal spirit. And she teaches me so much. She said the other day, I said, hey, baby, I want you to always be yourself. And she just turned and she was like, that's simple because everyone else is taken. And her simplistic wisdom is so huge. Her heart is so major. And what I learned the other day, man, and this is for not only for dads out there, for mothers out there, but for business owners, is I was struggling because at 12 years old, she wasn't wanting to hang out with our family as much anymore. She's a teenager or almost a teenager. And she was watching some stuff that I don't like her watching, there was some content that I didn't like. And she started watching Stranger Things, got bad language, got bad situations. I could watch it, but I'm an adult, whatever. And she started watching it. And I was kind of freaked out on it. And I was like, man, maybe she's going to get in a dark place and it's horror film and all this stuff. And then God just told me so strong, go and watch it with her. And I was like, what are you talking about, God? The bad language and all this stuff. And he's like, go do it. So I went into her room at night and I just sat with her and we would just watch Stranger Things. And at first she was like, oh, this is my show. You can't watch it. And then couple nights in, she was like, so are we watching Stranger Things tonight? And what I learned was a 5-prong or a 6-prong situation. Number one, if you want things to grow, just spend time. Don't try and add to, don't try and take away from it. Just simply spend time. And when I spent time with my daughter, what opened up was communication. And that communication was going back and forth. And I started to understand my daughter at a completely different level. The next one was understanding. And understanding, once you start to communicate, you start to understand where the person's coming from. A lot of the challenges that she was having, Ryan, seriously, were on the episode of Stranger Things. It was exactly the same. And she was almost manifesting it because she was spending a lot of time in her room and she was living this. And I didn't understand because I didn't watch Stranger Things. But then when I watched it, I was like, oh, she's not experiencing it. Robin's experiencing it. Mm-hmm. Oh, Michael's experiencing it. And then what started to happen is when you spend time, you have communication, you get understanding, then you start to master what is happening. And I found this when I started to master it, there was a scene with Finn Wolfhard and Noah Schnapp, and it was almost like a Peter Pan moment. Noah Schnapp was really sad on Stranger Things that all the boys were getting girlfriends and he didn't have a girlfriend. And then Mike, who's Finn Wolfhard, said, oh, it's not my fault that you don't like girls. And my daughter was like, oh, they're going to be a couple. And she was like, I'm shipping them off together. So the next morning I thought about it. I was like, I took that as more of a Peter Pan moment, right? So Noah Schnapp wanted to hang with his buddies, didn't want to grow up, didn't want to have girls. But what she was taking it as is that Noah and Mike liked each other. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I took it this way. And she's like, so you're shipping 11 and Mike? And I was like, well, shipping, it means they're in a relationship. And she's like, oh, you're a Malevolent lover. And I was like, yeah, I'm a Malevolent lover. She said, I can't believe it. And she laughed and ran off. And then when she was doing school, I ran up to her room and I walked in, I popped my head in and I was like, Malevolent, everybody, Malevolent. And she's like, I can't believe it. You're shipping Malevolent. And what it did is it created a mastery of that thing. Mm-hmm. And then what started to happen is a curiosity. It was a curiosity to figure out and find out how I could connect with Stranger Things on a completely different level. And that curiosity led to flow. So if you want to get into a flow state in your life, spend time. That'll foster communication. It'll help open up understanding. It will create mastery in your life. Mastery will create curiosity. And that curiosity will throw you into the flow of being a little kid. And when you're a little kid, craziness happens. And that's where my daughter's at and my son, very similar. My son he's just an inspiration in all realms. And my wife, I know I'm long-winded on this, but it's my favorite subject in the world. Yeah. And my wife is like, she's an amplifier. And if you're out there and you're in a relationship and you're not in a relationship that amplifies you, get out of it now, unless you're married. If you're married, you already made that decision. So stay in it, work it out, but break up with the person if you're not married and they're not amplifying you.
That's amazing. Yeah. You speak and you're very inspiring. And I'm just sitting here, man, I hope I can do that one day. And I'm not worthy because you have so much knowledge. You're so wise. I feel like behind your years, because I don't think you're that old. You might be similar age, but that's amazing that you've actually found a way to, it seems like, to connect with your family, with your daughter, especially by kind of taking off the dad hat and being a friend, but learning to see the world through her eyes by watching something that she enjoys, and probably also realize that, wow, Stranger Things is kind of pretty cool. I really like that show. Like, those kids are great actors and it's got a good story.
it was tough, Ryan, to get through the language part of it, because the language part of it was tough. And my son is very sensitive to language, right? And where my daughter isn't as much. We go to the skate park, and if you're a skater out there and you have kids who are skaters, please talk to your kids. Like, please talk to your kids and talk to them about language, because I was so sad. My son skates and he likes to go to Encinitas skate park. And, he told me yesterday, he's like, I don't want to go to Encinitas, Dad. And I said, why? And he said, because of all the bad language. And the kids think it's cool to be dropping F-bombs and all this stuff. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's where you're at. But I just don't think that sometimes people realize the impact that they have on other people that they're around. And if you're a 12, 13, 14-year-old and you're out there skating, I'm not saying you need to be a perfect kid, but I'm just saying there's 9-year-olds looking up to you. Watch your language. Watch your language, because your language becomes your reality. Your words become your reality. You know what I mean? So that's my dad moment right there.
That's amazing. Any other advice I'm a dad, and I feel like I'm a new dad. I'm in the thick of it right now. And it's the most amazing experience on the planet, but oh my gosh, it's exhausting. I've got a daughter. She's 2.5, little over 2, almost 2.5, I guess. And a son who is 4.5 months. So I'm in it right now, and it's tough, man. There are days where my wife and I just don't get along because she's tired, I'm tired, and kids are crying, but then it's like they're the most amazing things on the planet, and I can't remember life before it, and I couldn't imagine it without them now. But what advice would you give to, say, a new dad, a new parent to get through this, stay positive, even on those bad days when you're tired and don't even want to get out of bed? Like, what advice can you make me feel better?
I want to congratulate you, man. I want to congratulate you on it. Having a little daughter, having a son, doing what you're doing. I mean, you're playing at a high level, a super high level. And I respect what you're doing in the industry and what you've done for the industry and how you're lifting everybody else up. I think that that's amazing. What I would say is kind of a two-pronged situation. Number one is make sure you slow down. Make sure you slow down. There's a story of the daddy bull, baby bull. They're walking on top of the hill. The baby bull looks down into the valley, sees a bunch of cows, and says to the dad, "Hey, Dad, why don't we run down there and have us one of those cows?" And the dad looks at him very calmly and says, "Why don't we walk down and have them all?" And what I would say to you as a young entrepreneur and a young guy who's in today's society, what you're doing is crushing it, right? And which is awesome. And I want to applaud you on it. I want to tell you, though, too, is you'll never get this time back with your kids. And you will never get it back. And it goes by so fast. You're going to blink your eyes. That 4-year-old is going to be in junior high, and then they're going to be in high school. So I would say try and slow down as much as possible. And then use these kind of terminology, because this is what dads do. And I did it. So I'm not saying like, oh, you need to do this. I'm saying I failed at this. Realize that they don't care how much money you make, how much impact you make, or anything like that. They just want your time. And what I told my kids, what I convinced myself is I'm out on the road doing all these things for my kids. No, I wasn't. I was doing it for myself. Mm-hmm. And so if you're truly doing it for your family, then you will figure out a way to make it the most potent in the smallest amount of time so you can spend as much time with your family. Second thing that I would say, the greatest thing that you could do for your kids is love their mother at the highest level. And when we honor our wives, and when we honor the mother of our children, and when we honor her as the queen of our family, she is the one that brings life. She is the one that brings offspring. She is the one that brings everything into it. Now, we have a role as a man in the family, but the greatest thing that a kid could ever see, the greatest thing that a son could see, the greatest thing that a daughter could see is us loving their mother at the highest level. And so make sure that we take the time, that we honor her, that she hears that she's beautiful every single day, that your kids hear you saying that she's beautiful, and literally make out a lot in front of your kids. Like, your kids need to see that their parents love each other. Mm-hmm. And even though, like, now when my wife goes to kiss me, she grips my booty. And when she grips my booty, my 12-year-old daughter is like, "Ew, why are you grabbing dad's butt?" And she's like, "Because it's round and I like it." That's probably one of the greatest things that can happen. So make sure that you slow down and love your wife as much as you possibly can.
Kelly, that was exactly what I needed to hear today. Exactly. So I really appreciate that. That hits home. Kelly Cardenas, everybody, thank you so much for being here. You live close. I hope I can go out and buy you a coffee, a beer, something. We live too close not to. And if I just could send you a text every now and then and be like, yo, I'm having a bad day, give me a word. Then maybe I could do that. But anyway, how can people find out more about you? How can they reach out and say hi?
Well, on LinkedIn, it's Kelly Cardenas. On Facebook, it's Kelly Cardenas. On Instagram, it's The Real Kelly Cardenas. If you could help me out on TikTok, my daughter would be like so embarrassed, but it's The Real Kelly Cardenas 23, and then kellycardenas.com. So we keep it quite simple that way, but anything that you need, I mean, I would love to be able to spend time with you, Ryan, because what you're doing for the industry, what you're doing for people, and what I want you to realize is that today, Ryan, you are planting so many seeds, and you may not, and this is what I want to encourage you in, you may not see the fruits of it right now, but you're planting so many seeds in so many people that you have no idea. And I want to encourage you on your journey because you're doing great things.
Thank you, man. I just got like a wave of tingles. I love that. Thank you. Lompoc in the house. I got it right that time. Thank you again, man. And have a great rest of your day. And I can't wait to do this again.
You got it, buddy.
I love hearing from you. And by the way, have you subscribed to the podcast yet? Oh my gosh, if you haven't, please do so right now because there's so much cool stuff ahead. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because it would be much cooler if you did. Plus, I don't want you to miss any of the new episodes I'm dropping weekly. Last thing, if you haven't checked out ryanweeden.com yet, there are some great freebies on there that I want to give you. So go ahead and check it out, ryanweeden.com. Thank you so much for listening. You are awesome.